Well, good morning. Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Scott. I appreciate that. It's great to be with you, and I appreciate the flexibility to letting me go first this morning. I was not in the Capitol yesterday. Well, I was in the Capitol, but I wasn't in the chamber when they adjourned, and it was my intent to adjourn until 2 o'clock today, and they did it at 10. So I've got to be up there at 10 o'clock, and my time was to be scheduled in that at 10 o'clock, so Scott was very nice to reschedule my appearance here today. I had the pleasure of speaking to your Board of Governors yesterday. Had a great time with them. I had more time there to talk about a variety of things, and I only got 10 minutes this morning. So I'm going to have to be brief in my remarks, but I do know that my pro tem, Jason White, is coming later today, hopefully, and he is going to talk about some of the things we're doing in the arena of workforce development. There are two bills that we have worked very hard to push forward. I told the Board of Governors yesterday that I've begun to have a series of summits over the last few years, and the first issue that I took on when we had the first summit ever was human trafficking. I thought the things that I had learned about human trafficking were so devastating. I thought there's nothing of a higher priority than we need to address than trying to address human trafficking. We brought forward some legislation that has transformed the landscape in Mississippi on human trafficking. The legislation that we passed has been held up as a model legislation around the country. The second summit that I held was on workforce development. I hope that gives you a sense of the high priority that we in the House have placed on workforce development. And we've been working with Scott and MEC ever since to develop legislation that makes that a priority. I want to give a compliment to my chairman, Donnie Bell from Fulton, Mississippi, who has been my workforce chairman, and how he has pushed the ball forward on that. I've worked with Patrick Sullivan. I saw him earlier. There he is in the back. Ryan Miller have come. We've met. We've talked about how to improve this legislation. And so just want you to know that we hear what General Collins talked about a minute ago. We hear that workforce development is a high priority. I told the Board of Governors yesterday, I had the opportunity to meet with a guy from Washington, D.C. last summer. He was with the Association of Equipment Manufacturers, and his job was to go around the country and put companies in states. He's a site selector. And I asked him, I said, when you're selecting a site, what is the number one thing you look for? He said, workforce. Secondly was infrastructure. That was insightful to me. That was instructive to me, because we see what the importance of workforce is in this guy's testimony. So we're going to continue to work with you to make sure that workforce receives a high priority in the state of Mississippi. I think Jason's going to come later today and talk about some of the things we've done. Since my time is short, though, I won't go into that. I want to address something else. It's been a high topic of conversation, and the Board of Governors heard a more detailed explanation of this yesterday, and I don't have time to go into it in great detail with you today, but that is the conversation surrounding the elimination of our state's income tax. I found it interesting this morning. I was thinking about what I should say here, and I went on the MEC website. And I don't know how many of you have looked at this or if you've looked at it in some time, but I caught my eye that the vision, our vision, it says on the MEC website, is to cultivate job creation and economic growth. Why join MEC? It says MEC deals with broad issues that move Mississippi forward. You heard General Collins just a second ago talk about the challenges or the goals that you have. Well, number one was workforce. Number two, y'all remember what that was? Retaining our young people. If we're going to have a workforce, we got to retain our young people. We got to create jobs. We got to have jobs for them to work if they're going to stay here. How do we do that? What are some of the tools that we can use in the toolbox to move Mississippi forward, to create economic growth, which is what your website says? And then under your mission, the mission of MEC, to put Mississippi and her citizens in the place of greatest opportunity. These are your own goals These are the things that you state you want to be for. We would argue that the elimination of the state income tax puts Mississippi and her citizens in the greatest place of economic opportunity. I don't think there's any downside to letting citizens keep more of their hard-earned money. I would argue that as Mississippi's citizens benefit, so do Mississippi's businesses benefit. Everybody in this room sells a good or a service. That's what GDP is, gross domestic product. I said this yesterday. Many of you probably know this better than I do. You hear that term all the time, GDP. What is GDP? Gross domestic product. It's the sale of goods and services. The plan that we brought forward in the House of Representatives was taken by a couple of economists. And after analyzing our plan, they said that the economic impact of eliminating the income tax in the state of Mississippi would result in a $371 million increase in GDP every year in the state of Mississippi. When you define GDP as a sale of goods and services, they're telling us we're going to sell $371 million more dollars of goods and services every year moving forward. That is an economic opportunity that helps Mississippi and her citizens reach the greatest opportunity. When you put money back into the pockets of the citizens, they have a better opportunity to provide for themselves, provide for their children, improve their quality of life, go buy more goods and services, whichever one of you sells, give more to their church, give more to their community. There's no downside to allowing citizens to keep more of their hard-earned money. And those economic engines begin to turn. And as they go spend those dollars, economic prosperity begins to build and wealth begins to build. General Collins mentioned attracting young people. Do you know what the two greatest, we just talked about the census. You know what the two states that had the greatest growth in the census over the last, in 2020, over the last 10 years? Texas and Florida. Do you know what city in America is the fastest growing city in America? Nashville, Tennessee. What do those three states have in common? No income tax. Now, I'm not saying if we get rid of the income tax, we're going to become Texas and Florida and Nashville. We don't have Nashville, Tennessee. We don't have the Dallas Cowboys. We don't have Disney World. I get that. But it is a factor in attracting jobs. It is a factor in attracting young people. Young people know that if they come to work in Mississippi right now, they have to pay a 5% tax on what they make. They can move north to Tennessee in the excitement of Nashville and keep every dime of it. They can go to Austin, Texas, keep every dime of it. They can go to Florida, keep every dime of it. One of my members talked to me. He sells RVs, North Mississippi. He said, I am constantly trying to attract talent. That is his word for young people to come to work for me. And he says, I am at a disadvantage to the state of Tennessee because they can go 90 miles north of here and they can live and work in Tennessee and keep every dime that they make. I was in conversation with an economic developer in North Mississippi. He said, I am trying to attract an industry from out west right now. They are ready to leave. They're looking for another state to go to. He said, if he comes to Mississippi, he said the guy makes about $1 million a year. He's the CEO of a company, makes about $1 million a year. If he comes to Mississippi, he's got to pay an income tax on that $1 million. He can go 90 miles north of here to Tennessee and keep every dime of it. He said, I might not only lose that guy, I lose all the jobs that guy brings with him. And as MEC and our economic developers go out around this country and they try to attract jobs and industry, this is another tool in the toolbox, ladies and gentlemen, that we can use to attract jobs and industry. Come to Mississippi and you and all of your employees get to keep every bit of their hard-earned money. These young people, one of the proposals that's been put out there is to phase out the income tax through growth. We've done the math on that. It takes 30 years. If you just do it through growth, it takes 30 years to get rid of the income tax. How many young people are graduating college and saying, hey, I think I'm going to move to Mississippi because 30 years from now, they're not going to have an income tax? That ain't happening. They want tax relief, and they want it now. We are working hard at the Capitol to try to find a way, find a path to get to that point where we no longer have an income tax in the state of Mississippi. There's only 9 states around this country that don't have an income tax. We would be number 10. When we do that, we can attract those young people. We at least remove an obstacle to staying here. Many of them say, hey, Mississippi's got an income tax, we gotta go somewhere else. I talked to the DeSoto County group, right up there next to Memphis. I went and gave a talk on income tax. And they said, you know, we got Memphis beat on every measure. We have better schools, we got better communities, we have no crime or lower crime, we have got better housing opportunities, better entertainment venues. There is but one issue that Memphis has over us, and that is no income tax. And there are many wealthy people who live right across that line so they can keep all that money. If we get rid of the income tax, there's no reason for anybody to live in Memphis, Tennessee anymore. They would flock to North Mississippi. And from Horn Lake to Tupelo to Corinth, North Mississippi would explode economically. That developer that I talked about could attract that guy from out west to come and bring himself and all the jobs with him. Now, you've probably heard a lot of debate back and forth on the radio and other places between the House and the Senate about what plan there is. We believe our plan is good. But I've said before, we're not married to our plan. If there's a better way of getting there, then we need to get there. But there are a number of organizations that have come out and endorsed our plan. I don't know if you've paid attention to this or not. But these are organizations that are not involved in the political world. They got nothing to gain. They are just simply out looking for good economic policy, just like MEC says that it is. We're looking for ways to make Mississippi and her citizens reach their greatest economic prosperity. These are think tanks, policy think tanks. They don't have a political agenda. There's a letter that was written on January the 18th, the week we passed our bill back in January. Americans for Tax Reform. This is a Grover Norquist organization. Grover Norquist is the leading expert on tax in the country. You'll see him on TV all the time. The Tax Protection Alliance, Americans for Prosperity, Empower Mississippi, American Conservative Union, the National Federation of Independent Business, the small business arm of this country, has endorsed the plan. The Mississippi Center for Public Policy, the Bigger Pie Forum, National Taxpayers Union, Mississippi Automobile Dealers Association have all endorsed eliminating the income tax. My question is, why is MEC not on this list? Every one of these organizations are in favor of economic prosperity in the state of Mississippi. Every one of these organizations are looking for ways to promote economic prosperity. This organization, by its very mission statement and vision, and why do we join MEC, is right in line with the missions of those other organizations. So I would challenge you on this issue. We need your engagement. I just rattled off to you 10 organizations that have said elimination of the income tax will result in greater economic prosperity for Mississippi and her citizens. The question you have to answer is, why are you not on that list? I am willing to sit down and listen to your concerns. I want this organization to engage on this issue. I don't think that there's anything we could do from a legislative standpoint that would have a greater financial impact on our state than eliminating the personal income tax. We've done a lot of things. One of the things you wanted was the elimination of or change of the state flag. This organization led out on the change of the state flag. We got it done. I don't know there's any greater thing we could do from a social standpoint to do that. We have, in the House of Representatives, led out on an abortion bill that we trust will overturn Roe versus Wade. It's on appeal to the Supreme Court. That's a big deal. Changing the flag's a big deal. Ending abortion in our country is a big deal. But there's nothing we can do from a policy standpoint that will help Mississippians better provide for their families in their communities, improve their quality of life, take care of their children, than to eliminate the income tax. That's my pitch. I want you to think about it. I want to invite you to join with us in this effort to get rid of the income tax. And together, we will be able to fulfill the mission of MEC that is stated on its very website, which is to improve the economic prosperity of Mississippi and its citizens and provide greater economic opportunity for our state. Sorry I've got to go. Thank you so much for listening to me this morning.